From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here's where it gets crazy.
All right, now let's introduce you to the Rainbow Warrior. You saw the title of this episode. That's what this whole thing's about. The Rainbow Warrior was a trawler-class vessel, a ship, not just a boat. This is a ship, guys. It was built in the United Kingdom in 1955.
And it was called the Sir William Hardy. It is up to you whether you prefer the name Rainbow Warrior or Sir William Hardy. A trawler is essentially a motorboat that is seaworthy. So they wanted this because it can make long ocean voyages. It's not super impressive, it's not on the level of a billionaire's yacht or something. No one's living the high life on this. It's a workboat for a mission. And when Greenpeace UK got a hold of the vessel back in 1977, that's when they renamed it. They spent about 4 months retrofitting it. And on May 2nd, 1978, they launched it. And they decided to call it the Rainbow Warrior. It's named after a book written by one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, a guy named Robert Hunter, wrote a book called Warriors of the Rainbow. The titular line of the book, if you're interested, is, "The world is sick and dying. The people will rise up like warriors of the rainbow." I'm not 100% sure what that means, but it's inspirational.
Well, it's like, warriors from all over the place who look like everyone possibly could look on Earth, and we're all going to fight for it.
Okay. Yeah,
it's cool, man.
That's something you could get behind,
Super chill. In a revolutionary kind of way. But it should be noted that this ship was just rusted out, looked nasty. You can see footage of it in there's a documentary that Greenpeace put out that you can watch that's called The Boat and the Bomb. So you can really check out some retro footage of this ship as it was being changed over into the Rainbow Warrior.
It definitely needed that 4-month glow up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yikes. But let's just jump from there. 1978, I think, is when it was fully retrofitted. But then 1981, after it had been out on a couple of different missions, they reignite this campaign that had kind of gone away since the early 70s, this anti-nuclear weapons testing campaign. And when they did that, they wanted the Rainbow Warrior not just to be a fossil fuel powered vehicle. They wanted to be a little greener. Hey, come on, the name's Greenpeace, right? So they further retrofitted the thing. They put sails on it, massive sails. So now it's both a motorboat and a sailing vessel.
And that's form and function there. And if you think about it, that move makes sense because the most immediate criticism for an organization like Greenpeace using a boat like this would be, hey, you guys know what those run on, right? So it's a valid criticism. And our story really kicks off here in 1985. The Rainbow Warrior set sail for Auckland, New Zealand, and they are on the way to a very specific, infamous atoll in the world of environmentalism.
That's right, the Mururoa Atoll, and the plan was to meet up with a flotilla, which is just like a assemblage of vessels, 8 other boats, and prevent the next nuclear weapon from being fired. And this area had long been a popular destination for testing. Atolls and remote islands often are, like the Marshall Islands episode we just talked about, where the risk of collateral damage is seen on paper as being, low, but we know what happened with that story. It has long-term consequences that are not often thought of up front, but as long as the math adds up, then it'll all be okay. But it, often isn't. So in 1966, the French had begun testing nuclear weapons in this area, and they'd continue to do so till 1996, which is crazy to me. Despite these very intense protests, And Greenpeace says and argues that the initial test alone, which was codenamed Aldebaran, I believe that's how you pronounce it, which happened on July 2nd in 1966, spread contamination as far as Peru and New Zealand. That's that collateral damage we're talking about. And it oftentimes, far exceeds initial expectations because, there's all kinds of other variables like the winds and currents and things like that. So it's an absolute understatement to say that tensions ran high. They ran absolutely nuclear, pun completely intended. That wasn't really a pun. Whatever. It was very tense.
It was wordplay. It was wordplay.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate you having my back. But these French commandos, you see, had boarded a previous protest boat that trespassed into this exclusionary shipping zone that was bordering the atoll. And Greenpeace knew full well, or at least, to some degree, that the risks were there. And they planned to monitor the impact of these tests and place protesters on the ground to monitor the actual blast.
Yeah, like we can't stop you, but the world will witness your actions on this day. And these are very motivated people. They are, again, they're not working on a profit motive. They are working toward, in their ideology, a better world. And they're not there to attack these military officers or attack the scientists conducting these tests, but they want to do their best to make it really inconvenient to conduct these tests. And, I think in Greenpeace's favor, they were one of the organizations that was openly saying something that I think a lot of governments were privately saying, which is this: you all do not know the full extent of your actions. You do not know the consequences. You will probably mess something up, and maybe you'll get some valuable data, but that is not going to, improve the lives of the people who may suffer the consequences of these experiments. But Greenpeace, despite being very aware of the dangers of nuclear Armageddon, they were blissfully unaware of some things closer to home. You see, folks, Greenpeace did not know that before they went on this fateful trip to the atoll, they had already been compromised, and for quite a while.
Yeah, that's right. There was a person named Christine Carbone. She was not just your regular old person. She was an agent. Oh, yeah, a spy. She was working for France's Directorate General for External Security, or the DGSE. This is, again, in the same way the CIA operates outside of the U.S. or MI6 operates outside of the U.S. That's what this organization does, DGSE. Remember that name. And so she's an agent. She had gone in and volunteered to join Greenpeace. And back in the day, around that time, it was super easy to infiltrate Greenpeace. You just said, hey, I want to help. And they're like, come on in.
The story checks out. Hop on board.
Yeah. And she infiltrated through Auckland, New Zealand, which is, interestingly enough, where, remember, we already talked about this, where the Rainbow Warrior had set out to go before they went over to the atoll in the area where the testing is actually occurring, because it's not that far away. And she posed as someone else. She pretended to be someone named Frédéric Bonlieu. And she was and this character that she was portraying was an environmentalist. She was all about Greenpeace, all about anti-nuclear proliferation and stopping testing. But really what she was doing is just going, oh, what's that? And then making a phone call to somebody and taking notes and just monitoring all the communications, collecting maps where they're going to go. If there are any plans or information, intel on what's about to occur, she's doing this stuff. And she's also checking out the tech that's aboard the ship. What capabilities does this ship have, and how can we subvert them?
And let's get some specifics on the hull, says Frederick. I'm a just like you guys, I'm a utility player. I want to know everything. I want to get in where I can fit in. And the Rainbow Warrior, there was a lot of PR around it, because this makes for great headlines. So for a time, it was open for public viewing. and all sorts of tourists and honeymooners and supporters of Greenpeace and just curious onlookers toured the ship to learn more about what Greenpeace planned to do with this vessel. Thing is, some of those tourists were also DGSE. They were operatives. This part of spycraft always seems so, I know it's got to be a real nail biter on the anxiety scale, but I always wondered, do they take acting lessons? Like if you were posing as a couple on honeymoon who just happened to walk by a ship and wants to take a tour of it, do you have to like practice acting like a couple? You know, do you spend a week together just working on your bits? I don't know.
It's called improv for espionage.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
You know, I don't have personal experience, but I would say acting classes would probably help out.
Yeah. I think you're right to a degree. And they're really interesting stories about how people train spies to act undercover. There was a great interview with the lady who was in charge of CIA disguises for a number of years. And what's funny about that is that she is pretty casual with it. She's like, okay, we can teach people to walk differently. We can give them wigs. We can change different parts of their appearance. Here are the things I think work. Here are the things I think don't work. And when she was asked, like, what is the number one problem with, having people move in these false personas or disguises, she said, ego. She was like, nobody wants to look bad. And, if you think about it, looking a little bit homely would help you with your cover, right? Unless you're supposed to be a model or a movie star. But anyway, that aside,
I would say that's what always works out in those undercover TV shows with models and or superstars. The only way they get them to fit in is making them more homely.
Yeah. Let's give them a weird nose.
Look more like us.
No, we look okay. I'm not going to rate us, but I think we look all right. Anyway,
solid eights, solid 7.5 eights.
That's nice, man. It's good for. I'm not going to ask what the scale is there, but thank you.
Unclear.
Goes to 20. All right, continue.
All right, so here's what happens. Clearly, Greenpeace is relying on transparency because they want the support of the public. They are not a military. They are not a government actor. So they depend on volunteers. They depend on people who agree with both their goals and the ways in which they pursue those goals. And this comes back to haunt them. I suggest we take a pause for a word from our sponsor and return to July 10th, 1985.